decided to check comprehension through children's ability to retell stories verbally. Now, storytelling is defined as new accounts or adaptation of a text which children summarize orally or in written form. In this case, since the children are only 6 years old, so I asked them to retell their stories verbally. Right? And in order to retell, children need to first assimilate and internalize the text before they reconstruct it. And of course, in short, retelling then check on comprehension and understanding, reflects comprehension and understanding. When children retell, it allows teachers to assess children's ability for literal recall, such as remembering facts, details, cause and effect relationship, and sequencing of events. The means in which the data are collected are through scoring checklists, action research journal, and video recordings. And the participant, I have children randomly selected, and they are placed in 3 groups, 8 children per group, so a total of 24 children. Their socio-economic level range from lower to upper middle class, and based on their work and portfolio, the children English language ability range from below to above average. 3 stories from Oxford Reading Tree Stage 3 series were selected, based on a few criteria. First, they were all written by the same author, that therefore ensuring similar language level and structure. And since these are level readers, the stories are similar in length, about 80 words per book, and all had well-developed story structures, definite setting, problem, conflict, and resolution. And all these stories also involve context and concept familiar to kindergarteners. However, careful selection was made so that each book has different characters, so that children do not recall character based on familiarity. Alright? Now, I choose one medium from each category. For storybook, for printed for conventional print, I selected the book Keeper's Idea. And for puppetry, I performed the story Nobody Wanted to Play. And for CD-ROM, I used a cat in a tree. Let me first show you the book. This is how the book looked like. Keeper's Idea. You can see the illustration in the book. It's simple, it's clear for the children to look at. And let me show you the CD-ROM. Alright. Let me try this. Okay, this is the CD-ROM by Oxford Reading Tree, the OR3 series. Okay, I chose a cat in the tree.
Okay.
You see, at the bottom is an ear. So when I click on the ear, the narrator
Cat
will...
in the Tree. Story by Roderick Hunt. Pictures by Alex Brichter.
And of course, when I click the arrow, we'll go to the first page.
Floppy barked at a cat. The cat ran up a tree.
So as the narrator reads, the words are highlighted. So when I click on the boxes, and the children go, wow, and they start laughing. Hey, let me get out of here.
Do you want to quit?
Yes. Yes. Okay, of course, feel free to play with the CD-ROM later on. Let me get back to my slide. So the CD-ROM is actually specially selected to read the stories, to read over the stories. It's important to note, during each story presentation, no discussion was allowed. That means if the children to ask me a question, Miss Margaret, la la la, then I'll say, shh, and I'll continue. Alright, so no question, no interaction was allowed. Right? So the research question is, which media is the best stimulus to help children with understanding and comprehending? Now, what do you think? Which would yield the best result in children's ability to retell? Make a guess. Come on. CD-ROM, yes, yes.
Puppets.
Puppets. May I ask, why do you select CD-ROM?
Because the children remember things from, it's like when the dog barked,
Yes.
they saw the cat, it would probably be a bit more tangible for them.
Yes, very good, very young. Yes. I heard someone shouted, Puppetry. Why?
Because I read your abstract.
Sorry?
He read your abstract.
You guys with the suspense. Now, why do you think then Puppetry used the best result?
I don't know, that's why I'm very interested to find out. I would think that it's CD-ROM actually, yeah.
Yes, yes. Actually, when I first started writing the action research, I had the pre-notion CD-ROM. And I was like, oh, I'm going to make my writing easier. But
Puppets, when I've been teaching, the children really, they don't look at you, they're looking at the puppet.
puppets, yes.
And the puppet sort of takes on a life of its own.
Exactly. So it's very much non-threatening,
Yeah.
and the children takes to the puppet. All right. So now you know the result. Nobody chose books.
No.
Then why are we still using books in preschools? That's something we should think about.
Sorry, I'd like to make a point.
Yes, please.
With all this technology coming in and all that, of course, it's very good. If I'm a little child, I would choose CD-ROM too.
Yeah.
But I think children also need to get a feel of books, learn how to turn the pages,
Yes.
and admire, and be in touch with prints in that sense.
Yes,
And,
correct.
I mean, that's from an educator's point of view.
And puppets would give more of a sensory experience because you can touch them and put them on your finger and hold them, so there's more of the senses being involved now.
Yes, it's very concrete to the children when they have things to touch. And CD-ROM, unless they're clicking the computer, yeah, so it's different feel. That's why it's the concept of multiple literacy.
Yeah.
Children needs to be involved in all sorts of print, in different media, not just book or puppetry, but
Exactly.
all.
Some children will listen to a puppet more than they will to their teacher.
Yes, exactly. They'll talk to the puppet, and then we'll be like, you don't have to talk to me. All right. Now, so there was a total of 3 cycles. So Group A was presented the stories in the following sequence. First, start with book, and then carry on with puppets, and lastly, they're introduced to CD-ROM. As for Group B, they'll start off with puppets, exposed to the story through puppetry, then through CD-ROM, and lastly through book. And for Group C, they first started with CD-ROM, book, and then puppets. But in the same day, within the same day, all 3 groups will go through cycle 1 together. Which means if I were to go in on Monday, Group A will be exposed to the bookkeeper's idea. Group B will be exposed to the story nobody wanted to play through puppetry. And Group C, of course, will look through the CD-ROM, a cat in the tree. Now, why do I want to make my life so difficult? Why don't I have books in cycle 1 and puppets all in cycle 2 and CD-ROM in cycle 3? It's because by exposing the groups in a different order, it eliminates the effect of increased familiarity. Now, if I have cycle 1, books, introduce children to books in cycle 1, then by the time I have puppet and CD-ROM, they would probably be very, very familiar with retelling techniques by CD-ROM, by the time they reach CD-ROM, and it might compromise the data I collected. Okay? After each story session, after I presented the story, the children took turns to retell the story in another room. Okay? This is a scoring checklist which I've used to score children's retelling ability. due to time limitation, I will not go into the details of how I allocate the points and the grade, but these are the 5 structural elements: setting, theme, plot, resolution, and sequence, which I use, which I look up for in children's retelling ability. Setting refers to the general locale, the time, and the social circumstances. Theme revolves around the unified central idea. Plot reviews events that lead up to the problem, conflicts, and resolution. Resolution is, of course, how the main character solves the problem. And sequencing is to check on whether children, do they retell the story in chronological order. Now, this slide shows a mean score of each structural element tallied according to media. As you can see, for setting, CD-ROM achieved a significantly lower score as compared to the rest of the media. For the rest of the structural media, the 3 media, they attain comparable results. The results are comparable, not too much of a difference. Okay? With Puppet scoring the highest for theme, book scoring the highest for plot, computer scoring the highest for resolution, and book scoring the highest for sequencing. But in general, as you can see, children tend to have problem retelling resolution. Then all the structural element scores were tabulated and averaged out. The figure here reveals the overall average score for each medium. Now, so based on the data collected, as reviewed by our friend, Puppet achieved the best impact, the best results in children's retelling ability. And CD-ROM, the least. So it's not... So, but why? That's a question. I think we have a bit of discussion just now. For me, it probably has to do something, has to do with the amount of interactions involved. Now, bear in mind, as I've mentioned, when during story presentation, no discussion was allowed. So I didn't answer their question. I didn't talk to them except for reading the story. But, however, after viewing the video footage and looking through my action journal, I observed that children tended to ask more questions and made attempts to interact verbally during printed book and puppetry sessions. Especially during puppetry sessions. They wanted to touch the puppet. They even tried to strike a conversation with the puppet. Why? Why do anyone want to play with you? Don't worry, I'll play with you. You know? That's being children. And due to the nature of puppetry, inadvertently, there's somewhat more verbal language production on the investigator's behalf. Okay? This is in terms of the usage of voice to portray characters and situations when there's a change of props. Okay. Now, children remain passive listeners during CD-ROM sessions. Yeah, they are captivated by all the animations. They go, wow. They just sat quietly through and watched through the whole session without much interactions. Okay? Now, this research is by no means to discredit CD-ROMs or multimedia. I believe these resources are still effective and has its place in children's learning and education. Now, so for me, interaction is of vital importance in story retelling session. Okay, we need to help children to activate their prior knowledge, scaffold for meaning, comprehension, and to negotiate for meaning. So whatever form of media which we use, be it CD-ROM, printed books, puppetry, we need to interact with children, to ask them questions, to encourage children to talk about the stories, to talk about the print, to talk about the pictures. Right? The next implication is on the order of which stories can be presented. For me as a practitioner, after this AR, when I teach my students, I will probably feature the use of printed books and puppetry over the use of CD-ROM when I introduce a new story. And CD-ROM is then used as a tool for reinforcing specific story concepts. Used as a reinforcement tool. So not so much of a first tool that I use when I present my story. Okay. Teachers need to be aware of the unique media, its strengths and weaknesses, and why do you choose certain medium when you present your story. And engage the children with multiple forms of literacy experiences, because what each medium contributes to children's literacy development and experience is unique. How students interact with the media should be facilitated by the teacher using appropriate instructional language. Because when we use computer, we need to use the mouse. So it's again different language, instructional language structure. Like click the mouse. You don't use that when you have storybook or puppetry. Okay, I'm just going to a quick run through with the strengths and weaknesses of each media. With each medium. For storybooks and puppetry, they tend to generate more verbal language production. Children wants to talk, wants to interact. And of course, storybook is a familiar mode of story presentation, and they are able to see the print. And of course, the teacher is there and ensures a certain human touch bonding there, which young children need. And of course, puppetry is engaging and provides a subject and motivation for children to talk. And abstract concept of imaginary characters become concrete. They get to touch, they get to see. And it's non-threatening. Children want to talk to the puppet, they want to interact with them. And of course, the teacher is there. For CD-ROM, it's visually entertaining. And usually extended activities are embedded within it. And it is most of the time not dependent on teacher's storytelling skill. So you can just put in the CD-ROM and let it play. Alright? So you're able to see the print and the words clearly. As you can see just now, which I've shown you the CD-ROM, the words are highlighted and minimal preparation time. However, it's not time for you to go and make a cup of coffee, sit down and watch the children watch video, yeah? Or CD-ROM. Now, CD-ROM can be class setting or self-directed activity. Can be used in a class setting or self-directed activity. For some of the weaknesses, storybook and puppetry is very much dependent on teachers' storytelling skill. Okay? Your ability to ask questions, to tell, to capture the children's attention. And of course, there's a certain amount of preparation time. You need to read through the storybook to anticipate what's to come next. And for puppetry, you need to prepare the puppet, the stage, and to know the story very well, and to rehearse. And for CD-ROM, generates lesser or no interaction, unless teacher makes attempt to make it interactive. Okay? And story, this is not necessarily a weakness. It's story read by foreign voice. Sometimes the children may not understand the accent used by the narrator, and they're not used to it, and therefore can be a distraction to the plot and story. And these are some of the limitations of this action research. This action research was conducted, for those Singaporeans, do you remember the SARS period? Yes, it was conducted during the SARS period. Right? It is the time when we have a very high influenza. It's a strain that killed quite some people. Okay? So there are some absentees. There were some absentees. Some children were present for one medium, but not for another. So I may have one group that's smaller and then another group that's larger. And there's only one investigator. I was the one who read the story, collected the data, and analyzed the data. So it may not be as reliable. So better if another investigator watch the videos and lead the scoring. Because as one investigator, I may have certain biasness towards the topic. So these are my references. And I'd like to thank the children and parents who participated, and Lorna Mason Study Centres where I work, and the University of York who allows me to use the data, and of course to my supervisor and advisor. And here is my email. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret. I think we still have 5 minutes, so if you'd like to direct any questions